Teenagers in San Diego County are being investigated for sending or receiving sexually explicit photos of minors on their cell phones. Now law enforcement officials are reaching out to parents for help in alerting their children to the dangers of sexting.
UT reporter Gary Worth joins us to talk about a meeting held by police at Cathedral Catholic High School. Now that's just one of the schools with students suspected of sexting. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning.
So tell us real quick what happened yesterday during the meeting.
About 100 people showed up at Cathedral Catholic School. Officer Jordan Wells was there to talk about the investigation, but more importantly, he was there to talk about what parents can do about keeping an eye on what their kids are doing and just alerting them actually to the dangers of it, because I think that it's just sending a picture, but these things don't really go away, and it's something adults also are learning now, that these things don't really just go away. Think twice about what you're doing when you send any photo out that you may regret later.
Gary, I think a lot of these kids may not realize that this can also be criminal.
Well, it's awkward because you might have a 17-year-old who's about to be 18 years old, but if you are 17 and you take a picture of yourself and you send it to another
17-year-old,
you're guilty of distribution of child pornography, and your friend is guilty of possession of child pornography. Now, that's not to say that that's going to be prosecuted or that they're necessarily going to aggressively go after these kids, but some of the kids in the investigation are as young as 13 years old.
Wow. And in this case in particular, we know that it involved several different high schools, middle schools, right? Even has anyone faced any criminal charges in this case in particular?
No, they are still investigating. I talked to an officer yesterday and he said there's no charges yet. It's important to note that the kids go to these schools, but the schools aren't involved. Officer Wells said none of the photos that he saw had anything to do with the schools. It's just a way of identifying how widespread the incident was. But yes, somebody has been charged in other states, I believe. But I talked to an officer yesterday who told me about a case just a few years ago in Rancho, San Diego. They did prosecute this one boy, and he got probation. But he also said that he was suspected of some other things. So it was a way of kind of doing a roundup and make sure that they knew who he was and could put some charges on him.
I see.
Now, sexting can have a big impact on these kids' lives for many years to come, as opposed to just now, right?
Well, once it's out there, and who knows where it might end up, unfortunately. And some of the kids that are being investigated aren't necessarily the ones that were intended to get the photos or who sent them, but there were people who forwarded on to somebody else, and that gets forwarded on to somebody else. And there's been some tragic cases. There was a girl a few years ago who hanged herself after repeatedly being bullied at school because of a picture that she took thinking that she was just sending it to her boyfriend would pass around. In that case, the parents were awarded about $154,000 in a settlement against the school, which they said they did not do enough to prevent the bullying.
And what were the parents saying last night?
They were saying, what can we do, and why do you think kids are doing this? Why are they doing it? I don't know. Nudity is a lot more prevalent today. Maybe it's not such a big deal, not as Officer Wells said, not to judge what's going on or try to guess, but what the parents can do is put some kind of filter on your phone where you might be able to see what's happening on your kid's phone. And as Officer Wells said, this is out for the kid. It's a good thing for them to do to relieve peer pressure. If somebody is saying, oh, come on, please send me a photo of yourself, she can say, I would, but my dad's going to see it. We've got a monitor on the phone, and then they'll back off.
Now, the meeting was held at a school where some of the students are suspected of sending these sexually explicit messages. How big of a problem is this?
Nobody really knows. I think there was a study that was done a few years ago from the National Campaign to Prevent Unwanted Teen Pregnancy, and they said 22% of girls, 18% of boys had done it or received it. But there's been other studies that conclude that it could be a lot smaller than that. And also, the final word was that I should say they really don't know how many people do it, because the classification of just what is sexting and if people really are minors who are doing it, might be a little fuzzy.
Oh my goodness. Well, Gary, thank you for joining us this morning and shedding some light on this very, I think, debatable issue even, but good grief. I sure hope everyone learns a little something from this conversation.
It had long-lasting consequences.
My goodness. Thank you very much. Thank